Okay, so joining me today for this conversation, we have three people. We've got George Winder, a GP at Oakwood Lane Medical Practice. We've got Chris Jackson from the LS14 Trust, and Amanda Bradley, who is the cluster lead from Leeds City Council in the Seacroft and Manston area. So I was going to go for Chris first. So Chris, could you tell us a little bit about what is it like in Seacroft?
Yeah, so it's a great area to work in, and over the years we've built some really fantastic relationships. Particularly during the pandemic, we saw that real neighbourliness that came through in the community, and that want and need to support each other and to help each other through those difficult times. And hopefully that's continuing now as we transition out. We also know there are difficulties, like every area. The demographic being mainly white British. We work particularly with a lot of families, but we also know there's a lot of single occupancy households in Seacroft as well. And I suppose it's not massively multi-ethnic as an area. And one of the things that I've noticed is that people know each other. So, there's a real sense of community and people know who each other are, and we have people coming into our space and places across the community, and like I say, who are willing to try and support each other and help each other. And it's mostly a mixture of working people and some people, obviously, with support of the welfare system.
Okay, thank you. So this conversation is centered around some work that you guys did around domestic abuse, particularly as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So my question to you guys is, how did you know that there was a problem in your area around domestic abuse? So maybe bring George in on that one.
Thanks, Graham. Yeah, I think it's a good question. And thinking back, I guess a moment of clarity came fairly early on in the pandemic, when we were trying to work out as a partnership how we responded to the new challenges and what those challenges might be. And one of the we have a group who meet together, a design team of people who have a good kind of cross representation from across the area. And one of the elected officials, Councillor Jenkins, says, "Do you know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing more domestic abuse, more coming to me." And I'd just literally finished a clinic that morning and said, "That's interesting. I've seen two people this morning with that in some really difficult circumstances where, for example, a long distance lorry driver had not been able to work for a couple of weeks, had an alcohol problem. And, I think issues have arisen in the house as a result of those increased pressures. And it spurred us to find out more and to understand a little bit more about whether this was something particular to us or an issue with the pandemic. And certainly by then looking for some data, we understood that Boggart Hill, an area within Seacroft, has the fourth highest rates of domestic abuse across the city. Police were reporting a call every 30 seconds about domestic violence during the first 7 weeks in lockdown. So it was not just a local issue, it was a national issue, and certainly something we all felt a real strong need to see what we could do collectively to address.
Thank you. So you were basically seeing people and those connections with the people, and Chris mentioned the strong community. You were actually seeing the evidence in your particular surgery that this was becoming an increased challenge as a result of the pandemic.
Absolutely. As I said, it took a conversation between us for us a couple of to think, well, actually, hang on a minute, this might be there. Someone raised it and then thought it might be there. And one of the other interesting things is talking to other members of that group in that conversation. They initially felt that domestic abuse, they tended to work with an older adult population, and they felt that perhaps domestic abuse wasn't something that they typically saw much of. But as the pandemic grew, we also became aware of the increased issues and care strain that was apparent within home environments because of the confined nature of people's homes, but also lack of access to, day services, other services that people typically had. So there's a real interesting evolution of what statutory organisations felt their experience of domestic abuse was and what was happening. And I think one of the outcomes that we had was that there was an increase in understanding and education around staff in terms of the different ways in which domestic abuse occurs and different types of abuse.
Thank you. So, and I just wanted to bring Amanda in. So from your perspective around, I suppose, children and young people, were you starting to see anything as well?
Yeah, what we were seeing was quite a lot more, an increase in domestic violence notifications from the police coming through to us. We were also doing a lot of the welfare checks at the time for the schools. So we were doing them door knockings to check on families. So families were having conversations. So we just saw the pressures. I came into the local partnership, local care partnership group later on. So being invited as another partner to come in and support, really, because what we were seeing as well was the impact it was having on children and young people. So we wanted to ensure we knew what they were feeling and how it impacted on their lives as well. But we were definitely seeing that increase.
Okay. So what did you do? So I'm getting the sense that there's different people and different organisations are hearing the same theme. How did you come together and what did you do? And I suppose that's a question for anyone.
I'm happy to take again. So we acknowledged there was a significant need to respond, and I guess in a certain way, in quite a timely way, really. Sometimes it can take a long time to mobilise change, and I think there was a lot of change obviously happening. Other things, we broadly split the plan into kind of 4 parts. So something around training and education, as I discussed before. I think certain areas of the statutory bodies felt this wasn't something that they were likely to see, but we kind of thought perhaps that wasn't the case, and so some education there was important. Definitely, as everything we're trying to do as a partnership, was around community engagement, understanding more about the perspectives of people and how we could work together. We wanted to work as a group of partnership, so make sure that we were bringing all partners in who were likely or able to support this, and then developed a kind of a bit of a communication strategy through social media, because we felt that was the greatest opportunity to spread information as fast and as broadly as we could. So I think whilst it was the early in pandemic, by this point we were reaching the white ribbon. I'm trying to think of the annual campaign that we're having each November to help draw focus around the issues of domestic abuse, and we felt that by utilising that as a point at which we could focus towards, and we decided to do that. So certainly around that taking action there, we focused it around from there, and then off things went. Okay,
and so how did you use the Seacroft Local Care Partnership to, I don't know, corral everybody around this particular issue? Did you just come to a meeting and go, hey, we've noticed a challenge here, and then somebody else in the room said, yes, we've got a challenge too? How did the partnership working in Seacroft enable this, this 4-part plan to get off the ground?
I think everybody was seeing a very similar pattern. So from that, it was enabled us to say what we were actually seeing and what could we do about it. So it was then brought people in to say, what else can we add to the plan to be able to support the families, children, young people in Seacroft Manston. So as George said, he went around around the White Ribbon campaign, but we did a lot of training with staff, school staff and other agencies at the time. And we were also looking at which other partnerships we could build on to be able to support the work moving forward.
Yeah, I think, Graham, just to give you a bit of a concrete example. So I suppose, as Amanda and George mentioned, bringing all those different organisations together was really powerful. And on one particular piece of work where we decided that it would be good to create some materials that would be used not only in schools but across the community settings as well, with parents and with some of the young people that we're working with. And I suppose what I found really fascinating was working with experts in DV and trying to put something together which we felt would be appropriate and engaging for our target audience. So we looked at the idea specifically around sort of toxic masculinity in the area, which we'd seen and heard about and seen as a visual problem in the area as well. I remember one of the people that we work with once describing some of the behaviours on a specific street and saying the problem is with this, it's been normalised on my street, people just see it as normal now. And I think in response to that, we worked with a theatre and filmmaking organisation, and we tried to represent in a way, I suppose, some of those negative relationships that were happening, and again working with people who are really experts in this, and listing some of the specific language around that's used in terms like love bombing and lots of things that were new to me, was really fascinating. And then we were able to work with professionals to pull together something which we felt was quite powerful, but then bring it back to the group and tweak it and change it. So it really did appeal to, it was a place-based, if you like, response to this. So you could see how people might react to it in the area. And then we had that ability to be able to show professionals that we're working with, but also to be able to go and work with smaller groups and youth groups in the community and get their feedback from youth workers, from teachers, from young people about what kind of impact it might have. And we're still in the process actually of now launching that with the next round, with next White Ribbon campaign, and seeing how that goes in September and October.
I think part of that as well, Graham, was we were having from the schools and the teachers at schools saying that they were seeing behaviours in the playground that was already worrying them about that male toxicity, about being able to say how the power was already being shown in playgrounds. So we were hoping by putting the information into schools and the workshops with the video, we was able to support the work they were doing in schools as well.
That's where that local care partnership, I think, it works really well, because in what we've just articulated between the three of us, we've got the sort of the stats and the data and the real life experiences of dealing with this problem, and we've got obviously from the schools being such a big part of the community as well, and then that ability to be able to see that across different community organisations across the geography of the area. So that collaboration came together quite quickly. I think that's obviously one of the strong points of working with the LCP.
And I get the sense that you, as an area, as a partnership, you already had those really close relationships between community and statutory organisations, and a link into the community, into the people. So you weren't, it wasn't a standing still start. You already had that in place that you could then build on. So I suppose you've already said about quickly mobilizing. So that feels like a lot of the setup work was already done in those relationships. So how do you know that you've made stuff better? How do you know what the impact of this work is on the people of Seacroft?
I think trying to measure outcomes, especially in things where there was a certain amount of necessity in getting it done well in a way, is often difficult, and especially when they're broader, I guess, social outcomes that might not be immediately apparent. That said, I think we can really, look back with a massive amount of pride about what has and is evident to us. We know that from a staff perspective, as we talked about, one of the outcomes we were looking at the beginning was getting staff more confident and aware of the different types of domestic abuse and how that may affect people, because that came out of those initial conversations. And certainly from the workshops and other things we've done, we can objectively say that staff are much more confident in identifying, for example, coercive control. There's a significant increase in people's understanding and identification of coercive control. We have a really effective, and I'll let Amanda, I think, probably talk more about the impact it's had in the Riot Act program that's been run in schools, to the degree that we're rolling that out much more. We've got community ambassadors working within the community. So we have to have some presumption that those things are going to make things better for people. But I think we're fairly confident that they will. And everything we've done, whilst we can't measure it, certainly feels that it's good, and it's done with so much passion and so much energy, and it's continuing. And that's one of the other things that we wanted this to be, is not a small piece of isolated work. Yeah. And one of the things that we're trying to continue to challenge ourselves is to say, or certainly I do, how can we make sure this is sustainable? This can't just be a single, episode or project. This has got to be ingrained into what we do constantly as part of the LCP. So I think that there is some success in that it continues, as Amanda's saying. So we see that this is a point to build on. So yeah.
Sorry, Graham, I was just going to say, I would say we're able to have them open and honest conversation with families now. The staff are more confident, like George was saying, to be able to have them, so families know who they can go to, who they can speak to. And we're hoping, as we roll out the videos and the workshops within schools, I will give more open and honest conversations for young people to have with people as well, and staff within schools, which again will break down any of them barriers that families have about they can't talk to people. That we're giving them the opportunity now to be able to speak to people confidentially if needed, or get that support in place.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well from our staff point of view. Our staff, I'm talking about across the wider collective in Seacroft as well. We can't help people necessarily stop some of these things that happen. What we can do is enable our staff to be the best prepared they can be, and the most confident they can be to deal with these situations, whether it be something to do with DV, or whether it's something to do with the energy crisis, or something to do with the health inequalities. That the best we can do is all be trained, which is what happened here, in the same way. So we're as confident as we can be that we are supporting signposting, the best we can.
Yeah. And do you know what your staff say about this? Are they reporting that they are feeling more confident and they're having, I don't know, deeper or more valuable conversations with families that they come up, that they talk to? So as an unforeseen consequence of this one particular piece of work, do you see that as I suppose a bit more of a culture change across the patch?
Yeah, I think the one thing that strikes me is what George mentioned about the ambassadors, where we talked about, this is just a tricky thing to do, isn't it? With a tricky topic, is being able to train local residents who are in spaces and places where they meet other people all the time, and to be able to be confident in spotting some of the things that George talked about, and coercive control, and being able to signpost in the right way, etc. I think that's a huge leap forward. And what surprised me as well, there's so many people. I think there was a list that I sent on to Anna of about 20-25 people who had spoken to, wanted to be involved, and it might not be appropriate for all those people, but certainly the desire was there to be involved in this, and not on a sort of being done to basis. I sort of but more as a genuine partnership. And I think that's what's come through working with the LCP, particularly with George and Rachel, that genuine desire to sort of meet people where they're at and ensure that they have a there's some equity in some of these projects and these relationships.
Yeah. And what's your sort of main points of learning from this that you can you potentially take into other areas of your work or other areas that the local care partnership might want to look at? What are the main pieces of learning?
I think one of them would be the importance of partnership working. This is not working in silo. Yeah, simple as that really. If you're working in silo, we can't get to everybody, and it's supporting staff, like Chris said, and supporting families to know there isn't just one area that they can go to. There's other people out there.
Yeah,
I can't echo that enough. The reach of this was vast from a relatively small conversation, relatively rapidly. That is probably one of the things that will hit me home, bringing together people who are not just perspectives, but abilities and other things. I'm just remembering the people who are putting all the packs together, and there was such a broad reach of people from different backgrounds very quickly, and bringing lots of different skills. That would have never been achieved in traditional working models, just never, or it might have, but over a lot longer. And I think, it builds on to that, the connection, as Chris was describing, with local people and the community ambassadors and other things. Somebody, I think it was only about 2 weeks ago, so there's Legacy here, was telling me about one of the, I don't know if they would call themselves community ambassadors, but certainly somebody who works in an environment where women go alone, and they were able to flag a specific incident of domestic abuse and help and support that person to finding safety. That was only a couple of weeks ago, because that person now had confidence and ability to do that. And I think that's what I always remember, even if it's one person, it's such an amazing thing. And that is a very distant person from the initial conversation that we were having about what we could be doing. Just that it's not really wildfire, it's just being open and allowing people who really want to help and support it to be able to come in and share their gifts and their time and energy as well.
Yeah. And how does that make you feel that after several months has passed, that, as you say, that legacy is still there and you're hearing about it? How does that make you feel?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely, it's amazing, and I wish I could be more specific about what it was without wanting to give too much away. But yeah, we have said, and I've said as my role is a commitment to make sure that this isn't a flash in the pan type of thing, and we do that. And I think the culture, as you were describing, is that it's okay to talk about this, is that Amanda kind of brought up and Chris has shared, across other places, and that's it's embedding that within the kids and the work that they're getting, and that they're able to do that. It's enabling the toxic masculinity that Chris was talking about in the streets, where it's okay to talk about how that's affecting them, and having that cross-societal approach to that, so that it is culturally, not that violence is culturally normalized, but being able to talk about its effects and how to get support is normalized. So it's not hidden away, which, as Chris was saying, it's a difficult conversation. It is a difficult conversation, but we absolutely need to be making it sure, the other things that go on now about talking at bars, safe words in bars, and all those other things that are starting to come together as well. We've got kind of a Seacroft version of that really emerging and developing. And again, this is the beginning, not the project. This is the beginning of it, really.
And have you shared any of this learning across the city, across the wider city?
Yeah, I'm now involved with some work that's going on in Middleton now as well. Just being able to share some of the practice that we're doing, or being able to bring in some ideas, and that's just one area. But there are other conversations. Manston Ward, we've been able to have conversations there. So it's about sharing good practice as well. But I just want to say as well, Graham, one of the things I found is that it's not just being reactive. We're not just dealing with what's going on now. We're doing a lot of the preventative work as well that will hopefully support impact in the long term.
Yeah, definitely. And is there anything that, you know, hindsight is a wonderful thing, what might you have done differently, or, you know, even better if, what would we have thought about for this particular project?
I think we were discussing this today from Amanda, I think, with Rachel, and it's really, sometimes in this kind of work you always think, have we, you know, how far do you go, and it's a difficult balance, you know, how shocking should we be, what kind of campaign should we launch, and, you know, the white ribbon raises awareness, is it enough, is it, you know, I don't have an answer to that. I just say I think it's something that's worth reflecting on, particularly when you're working on such a local level. You know, highlighting these issues on a local level can also obviously could be a bit destructive. So there's a real balance there between how we promote, how aggressive we are in that, if you like. Yeah, and I honestly don't know the answer, but it's something I often reflect on, particularly when we've worked on topics like this.
Anyone else want to chip in with any even better ifs?
I was reflecting about the almost not the medical profession, but certainly GP practices and other things and their role in this. And I think that there has been other work and separate work and good things happening, but perhaps that there is an area there we could have looked at. And I guess there were distractions and other things happening and other focuses, but that's certainly something that I think maybe just having to think about, you know, we have had a really far reach, it has been amazing, and maybe that happened because but maybe having to think about other stakeholders as well in a greater diversity. I mean, we did get that, you know, saying that we've got an amazing diversity, and, you know, we did, but I do wonder, you know, could we look at that, and maybe we should look at that as the next thing. You know, are there other people that we're not, you know, just thinking back to those original conversations about we don't see, you know, from one of the organizations, we don't see much of that. I was thinking, wow, are there other organizations who haven't engaged in this work because they don't think that they are somebody who should be interested, or, you know, could support, or this is, you know, affects them. So that was, I guess that's my only thought, that perhaps, but again, would it change the way we did it? Probably not, just that maybe we should now be thinking about that.
Yeah, fair enough. And are there any particular next steps for this project, or it feels like it's still there, you're still doing awareness, you're going to link it into the white ribbon campaign? So does it just keep going? Are there any particular any particular next steps for this?
I mean, we spoke from a sort of We Are Seacroft sense, which is the alliance of these third sector organisations in Seacroft, that with the white ribbon this time, about really supporting with more social media. That came from the LCP and last time, but I think it's something we need to support across our collective and make it a real big deal, really. Imagine if we had, you know, every primary school and every secondary school, every student wearing a white ribbon for the day, and every one of our staff of, you know, over probably 100 people or so across the area, and you know, that those next steps could be really interesting. Could we make it even more high profile, using the resources that we've now got and the expertise, and yeah, that would be interesting.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anything that I've not asked? Anything else that you want to tell me about this particular project before we wrap up?
Can I just say some thanks? And I think she'll know who. Chris, can I call her out by name, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there was a real driving force in this, and I keep thinking that that's possibly one of the things that we need to consider. What's Anna? You're going to have to edit me out. I'll start again. What's Anna's surname?
Mezovic, I think it is.
Mezovic.
Yeah. Yeah.
We will be forever indebted
Mm.
to Anna Mesovic, who was a real catalyst and energizer and force of nature for this project. And it got as far as it did because of her. And whilst everyone was important to it, she was very important to it.
Mm.
And I'd just like to thank her and wish her well in everything she does. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really kind. I will pass that on, definitely.
Mm.
Right. Well, I'm going to stop recording there.